third series, the third webinar in our leadership series. There are quite a few names that we have been a part of the webinar series through the first one. Nevertheless, I would like to thank and welcome you all for the webinar again. And before for the ones that have just joined and are attending the webinar for the first time. Would like to give you a quick introduction about Challenging Horizons and the purpose as to why we are conducting this webinar and the series, the six topics that we are going to be covering during the series. So if you all have gone through our landing page, and that's how have been registered for the webinar. This is a 6 series webinar, which is a multi-stage leadership development intervention, which has been designed by Sai Kumar, who's one of the senior partners. And the entire focus that we at Challenging Horizons have is to create a strategy for real-time performance shifts to bring about in an organization, and also help leaders like you become culture and performance catalysts in your roles. So through these series, we are aiming in creating triggers and discussions that you could create for businesses and HR leaders to build a great culture that enables an all-round business impact. To give you a brief, as an organization, we come with a strong belief that implementable training and learning increases productivity and transform lives, which is why our constant focus while designing training interventions is how classroom learning can be carried out in a business environment, how we can make learning more sustainable. While designing, we try and keep using relevant case studies and relatable examples, irrespective of the topic, so that once they are out of the classroom, they can relate and implement whatever they have learned during the training. As an organization, what keeps us driving is creating a positive transformation in individuals and organizations to enable them in reaching their true potential. We truly believe that an individual is not limited by their background, knowledge, and skill is something that can be developed at any given point of time, provided the individual gets the right path and the right structure from some guidance. Challenging Horizons as an organization, we have been delivering behavioral training span India for the past 10 years. We cater to senior mid management as well as individual contributors. Like you can see, we've worked with different industries like manufacturing, e-commerce, pharma, IT, which gives us a great understanding in terms of knowing the human behavior, which does not limit us to only delivering trainings, but also understanding behavior to make trainings more effective. Also, the facilitating team that we have of about 150 empowered trainers and the in-house 40 trainers that we have come with a rich business exposure and strong domain expertise, which is what helps them in bringing about business examples and keeping trainings simple and yet effective for individuals to understand and make it relatable too. To name a couple of clients that we've been working for, we are associated with more than 200 clients and have been actively working with companies like Amazon, JK Tires, Godrej, Apollo Munich, where we have been delivering regular calendar programs, as well as we have been delivering need-based trainings and some of the trainings which are our forte, like the leadership development programs, culture change interventions, and sales training programs. So these are some of the trainings that we do apart, like you can see, awesome leaders, smart sellers, negotiation skills, apart from the regular calendar programs. We have also developed some of the associations and accreditations over the past decade that we have been working. So we are accredited by the American Institute of Business Psychology, and we are also associated with ALDA, through whom we get a content accredit. We are also partners with Directive Communication International, which is DCI, for leadership interventions, through whom we run a lot of psychometric assessments, and we also conduct their open workshops. Apart from that, we also have tool Carry On that we have created in-house, which supports e-learning and self-learning as well. So moving on, I would just like to introduce Sai for the ones that have not been a part of our webinar before. So Sai has more than 21 years of experience in terms of leadership. He has held multiple, he's held senior positions in various organizations like Vodafone, Tata AIG, IDEA. And he's also currently very active as an advisory board member for multiple organizations and SMEs across India. He's not just I'm saying all this, all the content that you would now hear is something that he's created, and that is because of the various certifications that he has from institutes. And he also specializes in strategy, performance, HCM consulting, and has worked with a lot of people in terms of excellence and bringing about a change in them by coaching and group coaching methods as well. So, Sai, I would like to hand it over to you for discussing today's topic, which is using decision making for enabling impact.
Priyanka, thank you. It's always lovely to get that quick and nice introduction from you about Challenging Horizons and myself also. Good afternoon, everyone, and it's an absolute delight to be here with you this afternoon. Thank you so much for making time. It just shows all of your resolve to participate in a like-minded discussion, receive some inputs and take them back to your workplaces and improve those. It's also delightful to see some of the people who have been here through the series. So thank you so much, all of you who have been able to join yet again in the third series. So to pick up where Priyanka left, thank you, Priyanka, for setting that tall order by giving the introduction about all the certifications, etc. But here is what I would say to all of you. When I'm speaking with you, it's a conversation which is fairly open-hearted conversation, just trying to do my little bit in contributing to my co-professionals' lives who I've been learning with all these years. So I wear multiple hats, definitely. One of the most prominent hats that I wear is that I work with multiple SMEs and corporates to help them increase their business performance. So a whole host of my work is not on the HR or L&D side now, though that's where I started off my work. But it's really actually around strategy, performance, and whatever you will see today or in this entire series is crafted more from the perspective of bringing business impact. And I want us to keep that completely in mind. Because when we talk about culture, values, vision, or we talk about skills, or we talk about decision making, or we talk about groups, all of these are supposed to take us back to impact and performance. And all of that translated into real money. So on that note, welcome back to today's, rather welcome and welcome back both to today's discussion. And this will essentially be about decision making that will enable impact through groups. Feel free to use the chat window. As questions come up, Priyanka is keeping an eye on them, and she'll keep letting me know when there is a substantial number to be answered. And I will take them at a certain point in time. For those of you who are here, you know that the first two webinars covered the basics of impact and performance. And that was webinar number 1. And the second webinar, we had spoken about group thinking overall. And here is where I had introduced you to 22 performance enablers, which over several years I've been compiling. In fact, it's a matter of joy for me that an article on the same topic had just got published in a leading HR magazine just 3 or 4 days back. This will be available on my LinkedIn profile very shortly, in another day or 2 days, for you to download and read. Please feel free to do that. I will also make the article available with Priyanka and Shefali. If you want to reach out to them instead of looking at it from my LinkedIn profile, please feel free to source the article and read it. Do share your reactions and how you would like to use it. And this is another artifact where I and the Challenging Horizon team can jump in and help you do much better in the organizations. So on that note, the third webinar today is about decision making. Now, unlike the other webinars in this series, my friends, I am not going to be introducing a lot of concepts in this. The typical pattern has been that I talk about some core concepts, then I talk about creating conversations in organizations, and then building a case. In this particular case, I decided that there's enough and more literature out there which talks about decision making as a skill, decision making as an attitude, decision making as a mindset. And specifically to say, organizations like HBR have been publishing enough and more on this area. So I thought, let me take a different approach. So what I'm going to do is apportion all of this time to helping you creating conversations around how decision making can shift in the organization. I don't want to put any more theory into this whole thing because there's enough and more available out there. So with your permission, just a few references that we keep looking at. The Art of Strategy is one of my favorites. In fact, I'm a diehard fan of economics and economic tools. And one of them essentially is the area of strategy and game theory. And that's where I have picked up a lot of my understanding about how to really move from strategy to execution and how decision making can really actually impede or help you succeed. Thanks to all these resources, thanks to all the researchers that I keep looking at. And here we go with what we are going to talk about today. So to my mind, when we talk about decision making, besides all the theory, all the research that is available out there of the factors which help us with decision making, there is one core concept that keeps bothering me. And this is also the concept or the question that has been there in the minds of multiple CEOs that I have worked with, multiple coups or the C-suite members, as we popularly call them, have been talking about. And that question essentially is, how do we enable rapid, effective, and timely decisions in organizations to help make them create impact? So some statistics, I accessed a McKinsey report some time back, and it actually said that 85% of digital transformation projects were failing 5 years back. A good 70% of them are still failing 5 years later. So what's wrong? Close to about 70% of projects that are started for IT automation fail miserably. Most organizations will spend a cartload of money doing strategy offsites and strategy conferences. A lot of you would have gone there. A lot of you would have facilitated some of these. But enough and more research has shown that less than 20% of what gets discussed in those strategy conferences actually get executed. Meetings, and a lot of you would have gone to meetings, and sometimes things which can take 1 or 2 or maybe 10 or 20 minutes of somebody's decision time get stretched across 3 or 4 meetings, most of them lasting at least 1 hour. So why is this all happening? Why is rapid missing from decision making? Why is effective missing from decision making? Why is timely missing from decision making? Do the people we work with wake up every day and say, today I am not going to let any decisions happen? Does that happen? How many of you have woken up like that? That today I am not going to let anybody make any decisions in my organization? I'm sure we don't. But what happens is, when you get around to a meeting or a strategy conference or an offsite, or when it comes to execute something or manage a transformation project, invariably, when the meeting is about to get over, somebody will pop up and say, hey, you know what, I have another idea. And there goes everything that you had discussed in the meeting. Or just when you start executing a project, somebody says, I am not sure we have thought this through completely. Let's go back to the drawing board. You know, these are some of those favorite words that keep getting spoken in the corporate corridors. Now, when I say corporate corridors, I'm fairly cautious of this, that this is not just about the Fortune 500s, or this is not about the listed companies. This is not just about the mid-size. This is even true for a manufacturing plant, some of the SMEs, NGOs, etc. In fact, it was surprising. I was working with an NGO about a few months back, and this NGO was supposed to work in the education space. And I say supposed to, because when I met them, they were doing everything but improving the quality of education. What they were doing was, absolutely horrendous. And in each one of these instances, what I was finding was all these idea poppers were talking about everything but not rapid, effective, and timely decisions. So, my friends, here are 4 frames that I will leave with you. So, like I promised you, I am not going to create a lot of content hoax today for you. Not a lot of theory, not a lot of references, not a lot of articles to read back to, but 4 frames. And these are 4 frames which you can use to create conversations in your organizations about improving decision making with whatever you have already, without reinventing the wheel. And that's where we can make a difference, because this webinar is about decision making. And I better help you make some decisions today, and also the people who you will take this content to. So here is your first frame. If you want to make sure that you have rapid decisions, and what I've done is I'm breaking this down into rapid decisions, effective decisions, and timely decisions. So if you want to make rapid decisions happen, there are 4 commodities that you already have in your organization. I'm sure you have a well-crafted vision. You absolutely would have some values that are out there on the walls of the corporate headquarters or every branch office, values that people can parrot at times. I'm also sure that you have certain principles or rules of running the meetings, etc., and definitely a strategy. But you know what? In almost all of the research, these are 4 things which are the most ignored when it comes to the day-to-day working. And I'll give you 4 scenarios to consider this. Imagine you have a vision statement. How many of your organizations have actually revisited your vision statement in the last 18 months? Not to change it, not to modify it, just to see how the vision statement is inspiring people. For over about 15 years now, various people have gone out there and asked employees in organizations, do you remember what your vision statement is? The next question is, do you know how to put it into action? If people say yes, then the next question is, do you know how it gets connected to your JD? And you know what's the look that comes on people's face? How's that? How can a vision statement get linked to a JD? Now, that's where the ball's getting dropped. Every human being has a vision of how their life needs to shape up, what they want, how they want their life to change. And if they can't connect it to what the vision statement of the place of work, a place where they spend almost 1/3 of their day, almost half of their waking hours, maybe more than that, if they can't connect their personal vision statement to the corporate vision statement, they ain't going to do anything about the corporate vision statement. You, me, all of us first ask, what is in it for me? We are not conditioned to ask, what is in me to give? We don't do that. That's not naturally us. Once we make sure what is in it for me, then we possibly come to what is it that I can give. So here is where my first encouragement to all of you is, if the last person in your organization cannot explain how the vision statement is connected to what they are going to do every day, even if it's the most mundane job, then we are not going to get rapid decisions in the organization. Frame number 2, values. Each of the values has a simple meaning. Now, for somebody, honesty means one thing. For somebody, honesty means something else. But if you can put down a simple definition that every single individual understands in the organization of what honesty means, if it's one of your values, they aren't going to be honest. They're going to find another way of doing those things. So what really do values mean in your organization? Again, does it relate back to the job description of the individual in the organization? That's your frame number 2. let's go back and examine this. Principles, and what are the principles that you live with? Like, how many of your organizations have a simple principle that everything that is going to get done has to be put into a project mode, or you have to finalize OKRs and announce them? Or if it's a special initiative, first you're going to secure the funding and then you're going to make sure that you put people into action. How many of us have principles like this? Otherwise, all that is going to happen is people's attention and mindset is going to wander to all the other distractions that they have around them and not focus on the core. Again, what you're not going to get is rapid decisions. They will linger, they will check, they will figure out, and once they have done all of those, they will come to the decision. By then, the train's already left the station. And last but not the least, the much touted strategy that we all have in our organizations. And how many of our people actually understand what is really the strategy? So we go out and make tall statements in strategy meets like capture market share. What does capturing market share mean to a procurement guy? Someone who has been put to task to purchase material at a L1 quotation without bothering about any of the other standards. It's simply L1. Now imagine you were doing a high-tech project where you had to put in hardware that was state of the art. And here is your commercial guy going after the L1 quotation, and after he or she gets the L1 quotation, they go after at least 20 to 30% discount. Are you going to get the best of the stuff and services? And are you going to get it in time? He or she may be able to get it at the right price according to them. But what was your strategy? Your strategy was market share. And what's your commercial guy doing? He's trying to get the best price. See, it's as simple as this. If you've got to get out and get market share, you've got to spend some money. So that brief has to go out there that we need the best purchased, not the cheapest. Dichotomies. And this is what derails rapid decision making. So I will just pause here for all of you to internalize this. Very, very important that we make rapid decisions in the organization, and it is never going to happen unless people have an internalized mental model which comprises of the vision, values, principles, and strategies that the organization stands by. So if something has to be done in a quarter, it gets done in a quarter. Unlike the 60 to 70% project overruns that happen. So if we go by the project overruns in most of our organizations, what needs to get done in a quarter usually gets done in about 5 to 6 months, and that too half-baked. So if you want to stop that, leverage the first 4. The last factor that you see on the slide is disincentives upon sidetracking. And this is again very important. In most of our organizations, we don't have a disincentive for people who don't make quick decisions. And a very simple thing, and you must be wondering what this disincentive could be. For years and years, we have had a tool called 360-degree surveys. Ask yourself before performance appraisals happen, or when people finish goals, or they have projects that they conclude, how many times have we initiated a 360-degree survey for every single member of that project or of a team to just simply gather this feedback saying, how did this person do? And would you recommend this person? And how many times do you have factors which measure if the person actually made rapid decisions, if the person actually upheld the vision, values, principle, and strategies of the company? More often than not, you wouldn't do it. Again, because we're not tuned to do this. I've personally been using 360-degree surveys as a tool for almost about 15 years now. And in those 15 years, I have seen only one organization which was actually putting the 360-degree survey to a good use at the time of appraisal. Most others use 360-degree as a coveted top talent tool. So when they want to do an assessment center or a development center, they will throw in the 360-degree as an additional tool. Other than that, we are not even using that tool. So when I said disincentive, it could also simply mean making sure that we have a very clear ranking based on open feedback of people who are good decision makers, rapid decision makers, people who make decisions which are based on the vision, values, principle, and strategy of a company. It's as simple as that. Sometimes having a number out there as a disincentive is huge. People go for rankings. A lot of us want to compete and become 1, 2, and 3. So sometimes when you put a negative number out there about a person, it's quite easy to get good performance out of them. And let me be very clear, when I say disincentive here, I do not mean monetary disincentive. And I'm definitely not wanting to have a policing HR disincentive of bringing the person's ranking down in a bell curve exercise or something like that. So that's not what I meant. The disincentive here is calling out who's good in decision making and who's not good. If you have any questions on this frame, and this is your first frame, please send it to Priyanka. She will message it across to me so that I can answer those questions. And on that note, let me move to my second frame for you today. Second frame, how do you make effective decisions? Quite simple. Most of you and most of us would have heard about a beautiful tool called balance scorecards. One of the simplest ways of making sure that people make effective decisions is to clarify 4 things for every role, for every single role. And these 4 things will help them focus on executing the strategy for the organization, for the function, for the team, and for those individuals. And what are those 4 things which will help you with effective decisions? The first thing, what is the financial parameter that I need to focus on? Now, when we often say financial parameter, people will wonder, oh, isn't that finance's job? Oh, isn't that a sales job? But here is a simple example. Let's say you are the part of a manufacturing organization. Sales has to focus on profitability of what they sell. That's financial focus. Marketing has to make sure that whatever they project out there is getting projected to the right audience so that it translates into inquiries, closed sales, or they can shorten the cycle at which sales sells. Again, financial focus. HR needs to make sure that there are people in the organization at the fastest rate, the shop floor is occupied, and people are productive. Financial focus. Likewise, an IT function has to make sure that any automation that needs to be done is automation that is making sure that the wastage gets reduced and the impact of whatever is getting done in the organization can be measured through clear automated tools, reports, etc. Again, financial focus. So in a way, every single function can be defined, or their KRS can be defined in such a way that what is a financial measure for this function can be brought out very, very clearly. A lot of times we don't spend time to do this. Unfortunately, what happens is, and no bad feelings towards my own older function, which is HR. Sometimes we just announce a goal setting exercise and it has to be finished in 15 days, 20 days. Why? Because the previous year's goal sheets are done, monies have to be paid out, and in between all of that, there is this whole quick exercise called setting your goal sheet up. And some of these discussions never happen. So these are all continuous processes that need to happen throughout the year. So like that, in the balance scorecard, it's very clear that the next step after financial focus is, how do I focus on the right customer? How do I focus on the customer who's right with the right tools and doing the right things? And how do I make sure that the customer gets everything that is right for them? So that's as simple as what is required for customer focus. Who's the right customer? What's the right focus on the right customer? And what does the customer need that is just right for them? Likewise, Clarifying your processes and internal excellence is again extremely important for effective decision making. And I'll give you an example of where we blatantly violate this. Um, most of our performance incentive programs are individual based. When you have individual incentives, people are going to focus on doing what they can do and what is visible, not what they need to do as a part of a team or a group or a function. And then we go out and announce in big golden words saying our environment is a collaborative working environment. Now imagine this, you're incentivized for individual performance and you're wanting to create collaboration. Is that ever going to happen? It isn't. And what suffers in this is decision making. Because what you wanted was collective decision making, and what you're getting is individual decisions. And we simply just choose to shove this under the carpet and create a collaboration training. Actually, what was required was not collaboration training. What was required in this case was to make sure that the people are absolutely clear on what's the right process and internal excellence standards to work. How do I add to each other? How do I make sure that the sum of the parts is contributing to the whole, and the whole is much greater than the sum of the parts? That's the kind of mindset that is required. But we usually don't get to that point. We don't enable this. And last but not the least, what do I need to learn and how do I need to focus on capability so that I can execute for strategy? So again, this is a spinner for all of you because more often than not, you thought that balanced scorecard is a goal setting tool. Actually, it isn't. It's a great strategy tool. It's a great strategy cascade tool. It's a great performance enabler tool. It's a great tool to clarify job descriptions. The balanced scorecard is also a great tool to create effective decisions in the organizations and to enable performance. But what we need is the right kind of approach and the depth at which the balanced scorecard needs to be dealt with. A balanced scorecard is not just a document that gets created at the beginning of the year and gets filled at the end of the year. A balanced scorecard is a conversation attitude that we need to have. And if you want to make sure that you're making great decisions which are focused on executing well, effective decisions which are focused on executing well, put the balanced scorecard to act. Make sure you have the right financial focus, customer focus, process and internal focus, and learning and capability focus. That's frame number 2 for all of you. Again, please make sure that your questions are shot out to Priyanka so that I can focus on answering them. Priyanka, have you got any questions up until now?
No, I don't have any questions so far.
Sure.
So if anybody has any questions, they can just put it in the chat box as well.
Please. Great. So thank you for that quick sense check, Priyanka. And on that note, I'll quickly move to frame number 3 for all of you. And the frame number 3, like I said, after rapid and effective, is the timely decisions. Now, again, if you have to make sure that if you have to have timely decisions, you will have to implement a framework in the organization. One of the simple frameworks that you can put in place is the Agile framework. Agile comes from the Scrum methodology, which started off from the software development industry, but really actually rapidly spread to many other organizations. So very famous organization where Agile, OKR, all of these are commonly used is Google. And we often quote that. But can it get applied in your organization? Yes, it is. And Agile clearly says that every 2 weeks, you have to have something that you finish and deliver. Every 2 weeks. So if you're working on a new design, 2 weeks, something has to get delivered. Then you check and learn the lesson and go back to executing. If, let's say, for example, Priyanka and I were to do a program for you, we have to make sure that something gets done which is concrete in 2 weeks. Then we have to check, come back and execute again. If all of you have to go back and create conversations on decision making in your organization, please make sure that you have moved the needle substantially in 2 weeks. If not, then there is something additional that you need to get done. But the agile timeline is always 2 weeks. But I've experienced something very funny in organizations. Uh, you know, and particularly these couple of organizations where I was having a conversation with some very senior people, and I almost fell off the chair when they told me we have an adapted agile methodology. So I said, okay, what is the adapted agile methodology? So, I was almost looking at or trying to find data that maybe they have a award-winning work that they have done, or some article can get published. So the researcher in me stepped up. So the senior team members go on to explain, the 2-week timeline was ending up being too tight for us. So we adapted the agile, and in our framework, we spent 3.5 weeks at agile before we deliver anything. And I'm like, wow, you have just gone out and beaten the whole purpose with which the whole Scrum methodology and agile was then created. Because in the first place, you created the 2-week timeline in agile and Scrum so that you have a sensible checkpoint, so that what needs to get done is getting done, so that somebody who was not supposed to drop the ball is not dropping the ball. And that's why the delivery timelines were kept at that. So it's a funny way how we choose to say, my organization is different. The way things are done here are different. Standard methodologies which were successful elsewhere cannot be applied here. So it's a little funny how we throw the baby out with the bathwater. So my encouragement, don't do that. The agile methodology and the Scrum methodology in itself is a beautiful way to approach things. OKR, again, another very famous method. The beauty and the simplicity of OKR is, again, that every 3 months you revisit how close you are to strategy, and you decide 1, 2, or 3 big things that the entire organization needs to get done. And this doesn't mean that the day-to-day work stops. No, the day-to-day mundane continues. But if there are some big initiatives to be completed, every 3 months, a new goal is picked up, and then you go out and execute as an organization. Obviously, there is a need for some caution of every function needing to be aligned, but it's a great way to get done. And when OKRs are set, typically 4 things happen. One, at the end of a quarter, the OKR is closed, which means people achieve. And the organizations which have implemented OKRs well, they always say this, that in 3 months we will complete it. And heaven or hell, they make sure it is done. That's one operation. So they finish the OKR goal. The second OKR goal that happens is, operation that happens is, at the end of the 3 months, they figure out that whatever they did was pretty easy. They can stretch it. So they do an operation called extending the OKR, or stretching the OKR. So extending the OKR typically means that they would pile on another couple of targets to that, and this time they will do a slightly heavier target and carry on with the OKR. They'll change the numbers. So that's the second operation that some organizations do. The third operation that I just mentioned was stretching, where they will go out and load the OKR and say, we will gun for 100, but even if we miss, we will do 85. So that's how they set a stretch OKR goal. And there are times when an OKR at the end of the 3 quarters will get truncated, also saying, whatever we wanted to achieve in this goal, we have done it. We don't want to carry on with it any longer. We will stop this goal now. So very many ways organizations use OKRs and increase or decrease focus on them and help them get the right results. So that's another one of them. I will leave you with my personal favorite in this one. So just taking that liberty, with every client that I work with, and with every coachee that I have, whether it's a senior person or a middle level person, an MD or a mid-level manager, I have something that is called the 72-hour rule. So after cleaning up what is on their plate, which means discarding anything that they should not be focusing on, I usually set up an agreement with them that they will have a 72-hour rule. And what's the 72-hour rule? So it simply means anything that you have to get done, anything at all, if you haven't focused on it for 72 hours, if you haven't done something about it for 72 hours, one of two things you are going to do. Rather, one of three things you're going to do. The first thing is you're going to get to doing it immediately. So stop everything else. Do that now. Number two, if you think you haven't done it and if you think you're not capable of doing it anymore, get somebody else to do it. So either delegate or get a consultant or get help or get a coach or whatever you need to do. The third thing is, if you can't do it and somebody else can't do it, then you better strike it off your list. It's as simple as this. So every 72 hours, you're doing what is called housekeeping. So I'll give a personal and professional example of this. Okay. And let me take a very funny one, because most of us on this call do a beautiful activity every day in the morning, and it is called snooze snooze. So you set an alarm in the evening, and I can see some faces which are smiling to this, and I know some of you are laughing away to this. So every evening or virtually every weekend, and especially those of us who enjoy the weekend spirit, we set a goal that we want to wake up at 5 o'clock and go for a run or go to a gym, and some such funny goals we set up. Some of us set up goals like, I will spend family time. Some of us fathers and mothers here who say, we will spend some child time or spouse time. And invariably, we don't do anything about it. So here is a 72-hour focus on this. If 3 days continuously you falter on it, first thing to do, stop everything, do it right now. Okay. Which means if you had to do a health goal or family time or whatever, just achieve it then and then, and stop the snooze. Number two, if you can't do it, get somebody else to do it. Now imagine how funny it is. Instead of the father or the mother on this call spending time with the child, you get another parent to spending time with the child. Can that happen? Won't happen, no? So it pinches. Yeah. So that's why you need to either do it yourself or get somebody else to do it. Third is, if you find, and this is with all humility, I'm saying this, and being very considerate that we all have some very tough lives, which means traffic is tough, managing finances is tough, managing our roles in organization is tough. For most of us, health is getting tougher these days because everything from vitamin deficiency to bad air to repeated infections, we are all suffering from something or the other. So if things are tough, don't take on that goal. Clean up something on your list and come back to this goal a little later. Just make sure that you come back. But you have to go back and clean up something else with this 72-hour rule. So this is a personal example. Yeah. Thank you for all the laughter. But that's how it helps. Now let's look at the organization. You were supposed to deliver a report or a new project proposal or a new plan, or you were supposed to go back and meet a customer or do something about some automation that you're supposed to create, whatever your functions are, whether it's finance or business or HR or manufacturing. Every 72 hours, just check back on your calendar and see how many things are you leaving incomplete. Every 72 hours. Right? And if there is something incomplete in the last 72 hours, then again the 3 rules apply, which means either stop and decide now, or get somebody else to decide for it, or make sure that you totally knock that thing off your list. But make decisions. And the rapid decisions in this case are either I'm going to do it now, or I'm going to get somebody else to do it, or I'm going to declare that this will not be done at all. So that's how this frame helps the decision making. So that, my friends, was the third frame for you. So quickly going back and putting the 3 frames together for you, we started by saying, how do we enable rapid, effective, and timely decisions in organizations? The answer is, make sure rapid decisions are happening through every person practicing the vision, values, principle, and strategy in their roles. Their job descriptions have to be suited to every year's vision, value, principles, and strategy. Values don't change often, but sometimes vision alignment can happen and strategy definitely changes. Okay? And provide disincentives. Effective decisions can happen only when you use a tool like a balanced scorecard. And I use just one tool's example, but there are some others that you can use. But get your financial focus, customer focus, process and internal focus, and learning and capability focus very clear for every single role in your organization. That's how effective decisions will be made. And finally, timely decisions will be made when you have a frame like an agile or an OKR and my personal favorite of 72 hours, all put together. And when you put all of these things together is when people will actually start working together. It's not through some team building training, or it's not through some collaboration training. So at Challenging Horizons, one thing that we focus on is when our clients keep telling us, do a leader team building outbound, do a collaboration training, or do something like this, we often get down into the depth of what's missing. And more often than not, those trainings are just addressing a symptom. We go deep down and we actually focus on enabling collective performance, and enabling collective performance through the right decisions. Rapid, effective, and timely decisions. So this is one of the things that we do. And it's also something that we cover in our leadership program. Here's my personal favorite. Besides the 3 frames that I shared of what to do, here is a frame on what not to do. Yeah, because in each one of your roles, and when you're guiding, coaching, talking to business leaders, it's extremely critical to know what not to do rather than what to do itself. Okay, so for you, there are 10 elements on this slide. Whenever you're working with leaders to enable group performance or individual performance, help them acquire this attitude that don't make decisions when you're anxious. And more often than not in our organizations, when there's a pressure, whether it's a sales pressure, savings pressure, hiring pressure, delivery pressure, a lot of us get into anxiety. And when we are in anxiety, highly likely the decisions that you're going to make is just going to be to release the anxiety, which is point number 2 that you see here. Okay, so don't make decisions in anxiety, because if you make decisions in anxiety, it will only be to release anxiety. It is not going to be a rapid, effective, timely decision. It's going to be only an anxiety management definition. So release your anxiety, get your fundamentals right, and then make a decision. Number 3, don't make decisions to outrun others. It's good to compete, but it's very important for us to know what to compete in and what not to compete in. Especially when it comes to decisions, don't try to make a better decision than somebody else, faster decision than somebody else, or a decision which can make sure that you get something and the others don't. These are all inappropriate ways of making decisions. Again, going back to the previous 3 frames, decisions have to be made keeping in mind a vision, value, strategy of the organization, of the financial focus, the customer focus of the organization. The decision is not about you or another colleague. The decision is not about you or a vendor partner. The decision is not about who does what. The decision is about the strategy of the organization, which is why don't do this. Don't try to outrun somebody. Similarly, don't make a decision to protect yourself. Again, a lot of times, almost all of us would have done this some point in time of our career, that you made a decision just because you wanted to prevent a repercussion to come to you. That let me make this decision, at least the project will move forward. Let me make this decision so that at least the timeline will be met. How many of us have had the courage to stand up and say, according to the vision or the values of the organization, this decision cannot be made right now, or this decision cannot be made at this point in time, or this decision cannot be made with the kind of choices that we have on the table, or the resources that we have on the table, each one of these. We wouldn't have said that. My bad. Again, don't make decisions to pass the ball on to somebody. Again, it's like moving things forward so that, okay, rest of it, somebody else will do it. Let me just do my part. Again, it's bad. It's a band-aid approach and it will show up. Don't make a decision to set up somebody else for failure. Like one of the common decisions that managers make, it's, okay, I'm going to give this to one of my team members who needs to learn. My God, that's a dangerous one. You're getting work done in the organization by helping somebody learn how to do that work can be very dangerous. Why don't we take time to train, coach our people, and then get them to do something? Very often, very important. Sink and swim management has been shown as a very big dent in the armor of most organizations, but we still use the approach. And the caveat that we give our team members is, why don't you do this? You will learn a lot. Well, idea is, are you doing something to get the work done or just to learn? Learning is important, but there are many ways learning can be structured properly. That's all I'm saying. And it has to be done scientifically. Quickly moving on, don't make decisions to challenge somebody to prove themselves. And again, this is like, telling somebody that, look, I am creating this opportunity for you. Now you do what you can do. I know you can do it, this, that, and the other. Don't make a decision as a toss up, which means let's see what will happen. Let's take a chance. Don't do these kind of things. It can be dangerous, especially in a crucial matter. And by saying these, I might be challenging some of your established norms of working. Maybe you have got success, but these are dangerous ways of working. They may be hit and trial, and they may be successful once in a while, but not on a consistent basis, which is what your organization needs. Finally, it's also dangerous to make your decisions in a tight and trusted time manner always, because then you are not innovating, changing, etc. And finally, don't make a decision only because you have to or you want to. And this is usually a matter of authority and position. Because you are there in that authority or position, just don't make a rapid decision or a random decision. Allow somebody else to make it if they are more qualified. So from my own experience, and especially I can assure you of this, that on this slide, I have put only those points which I have worked with C-suite members to avoid. And these are all C-suite behaviors which I have called out right now. Sad, but this happens. And it's our competitive, hard-pressed for time, less time for thinking organizations or environment that we have at the work these days that have created these kind of perils. So those, my friends, were the 4 frames for you of how to get around to impactful decisions and enable the collective decision in organizations by helping rapid, effective, and timely decisions, and what not to do so that challenges can be avoided. Largely, this is what I wanted to share with you today. And this is how we can answer the very important question of how do I make rapid, effective, and timely decisions in organizations. I will pause if you have any questions. And you can, at this point in time, share questions both through the chat box or by unmuting yourself and speaking up. Anyone? Any questions? Okay. If not, then overall, when you're trying to create discussions, and this is a frame that I have been bringing back in every webinar, I will continue to say this. Whatever you have heard today, if you want to start creating conversations, the best way to start is find out what are the dilemmas that your organization or people or teams are facing. And a dilemma is where people are wondering whether I should do this or that. Or to identify what are derailers, which means where are failures already happening in your organization. When you find out the dilemmas and derailers, put together, these are the disabilities of your organization. For you to start creating conversations with whatever content you have received today, whatever you've heard today, please start figuring out these two so that you can drive your organization in the right direction. The Challenging Horizon team and I am myself available if any one of you needs any further discussion. And this is not just about doing an active project, but even if you want to, over a cup of tea, have a chat with us and figure out how you can help the organization get through some situation, whether it's a new strategy that you're crafting or it's the elusive profitability that you want to go after, or it's a digital transformation or any change management project that you're trying to do. In any of these cases, if you're finding a challenge with decision making, especially group decision making, we are happy to help you with this thing. Priyanka, on that note, back to you. That's most from my side for today.
Right. Thank you, Sai. Thank you so much for sharing valuable insights on decision making. I would request if anybody has any questions, or if you have any comments that you want to share, please feel free to do so in the comment box, so that you can make the most out of the webinar. And like I mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, this is a series of webinar, and we will be conducting the fourth one, which would be on leveraging diversity and inclusion to achieve an impact. Where we will be talking more about untapped potential. So, for all those who've been here today, we would,
Priyanka,
yeah,
just quick one, sorry, before you finish. I think we are also going to announce another round of the whole webinar series, right? So just in case somebody's missed 1, 2, 3, they can
right.
be a part of that other one. Yeah. So just wanted to call that out. Yeah. And
Yes.
also, if you have any questions and afterthoughts where we can help you later, please feel free to write to Priyanka or Shifa.
Right. So, anybody, for all those who've attended the webinar today for the first time, we would be sharing the links of the previous webinars so that, you could go back and revisit them. You could just understand a little bit more as to what we've covered so far, so that when you come back for the fourth series, there would be a connection, and, it would help you all. Right. So you will definitely be receiving emails, and we will be in touch for when we are conducting the fourth webinar. It would be in a fortnight, and we would look forward to seeing you there and speaking to each one of you individually as well. So I don't see any questions so far. Thank you so much, Vijay, for your Vijay and Sagar for your feedback. We, I think there are no more questions. So thank you everyone for your time,
Thank you.
and look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.